Hi, Alan Stratton from woodturning. In last week's video I turned this Volcano style salt urn or salt shaker. I did that in preparation for a remote demo that I was about to do. In this video I want to solve some questions that came up in the demo and that have come up in recent videos. So one is, what about pepper? Well, if you want to grind pepper, that's a totally different project. Go back a couple more weeks to the pepper grinder that I did. If you're willing to use pre-ground pepper, then you probably need to make this hole just a little bit bigger. You may want to measure one of the pepper grinds, because I'm sure they're all different, and drill a slightly bigger hole. Another option that came up was some people responded that they like to cup the little top of the volcano just a little bit so that it accumulates salt. I will accept that as an option. For me, I prefer a flat surface. That's enough. So either way, your taste, it's salt after all. The last question that really came up was, what wood do I prefer for a salt shaker? Well, one, it needs to be dry because you don't really want it moving on you. But number two, well, that's a tougher one to answer because some woods impart flavor to other foodstuffs. So hickory and mesquite, maybe we like that because the smoke is good, flavors stuff well, meat particularly. But what about walnut? Well, to me, walnut smells like a barnyard. What about cottonwood? Well, that has a smell too. Well, what about a burl? Well, this is a nasty little burl here. Can it serve as a container for my salt urn? Well, in answer to that, I'm going to say any wood will do. Make it the one you choose. But if it's one of those woods that you do not want in contact with your salt or pepper that goes in, then make an insert. On one of these, we drilled in and then put the funnel in. So it's two pieces to this. But if you're trying to avoid cavities like in this burl, or you have a nasty wood, go ahead and insert an entire container, a liner if you will, of a piece of wood that is food friendly, and then make your funnel and put that on top of that out of the same wood. And so this is a three-piece salt urn, the burl for what it imparts, and the container for to line the salt so there's no salt loss from the burl in this case, or no salt flavor or flavor to the salt from walnut. And there you have it. Any wood goes. Let's make this. What is it? Originally I was thinking a rock, but then I showed it to some people and they said, that's an apple fritter. So let's turn this apple fritter. The first order of business in this project is to tame the burl. No surface is parallel. This is perfect for my pin faceplate, which is simply a faceplate with screws poking through it. The live center holds it securely. I'm very comfortable with this hold as secure. While there are as many alternatives now as there are turners, using my bowl gouge, I rounded off somewhat and cut a dovetail tenon around the live center. Now to flip the wood around and mount it to a squirrel chuck. With this hold, I can round off the edges that are squarish. But, more importantly, I want to drill a hole in this side for that salt cavity. I drill in two stages. First, with a smaller diameter drill that can deal with this hard wood. Then follow up with a drill at the target diameter. This works better for me than drilling all at once. I just have to make sure I do not go too deep. Now I have to take a break. The wood is too gnarly to directly hold salt or pepper. I have prepped a piece of ash. I believe this will not flavor the salt and will be okay to work. So now for a spindle and, of course, cut tenons on both ends and part off a good chunk. Next, fit the cylinder to the hole I drilled in that burl. Fitting is typical. Measure, cut, test, measure, cut, test, measure, cut, test until it works. Then glue in the insert and let the glue dry. With the burl back on the chuck, I can cut off the excess from the insert. Then, similarly to the burl drilling, drill a smaller hole before drilling to the target diameter. Lastly, I drill a very shallow mortise at the diameter originally drilled into the burl. The Volcano insert will serve as a rim to this hole. With the ash back on the lathe, I now can tackle the Volcano funnel. First, I cut the Volcano slope. Then drill for the salt hole at 5/64 inch. Pepper would need to be a little bit larger. Some turners cut a hollow at the top to capture more salt, but I prefer a flat surface, but potentially more shakes to deliver the salt. I start with a center drill, a short stubby bit to prevent hole wandering. Then drill through the Volcano halfway. Later, I will drill the remainder from the other side. Then the tricky part is to fit the Volcano into the recess. It requires a trade-off between how deep the salt cavity can be versus capacity. Blind fitting is tricky, requires patience, and it is not too hard overall. Working with a long piece of wood allows me to make mistakes and or change my mind. Then part off the Volcano. Next, reverse the Volcano into the chuck. The little rim which fits into the recess is sufficient to hold the funnel. Now, cut the bottom funnel, which will be used when filling the shaker. Again, I start with a stubby drill before switching to the final bit. Finally, glue the insert into the burl and let the glue dry. After a little cleanup, let the carving begin. I recently purchased an air-driven grinder since my right-angle tool died a smoky death. There are no rules here. My objective is to take off all the bark, preserve the burl node shape, and disguise the sawn surfaces. This tool is dangerous. I am careful to keep my free hand away, using the chuck or hand wheel to rotate the wood. After carving as much as I can while mounted to the chuck, I switch to a table and clamp the wood with a wooden clamp while I address the top surface. One thing to note is a valley between the burl nodes where the insert shows a little bit. Finally, I risk holding the wood in my hand. Next, that valley where the insert is peeking out, I have plenty of coarse sawdust. I think to use the UV resin over sawdust in the gap. Then the mistake. I apply UV resin on top of the sawdust and pack sawdust into the resin. The UV flashlight starts the drying process. But remember that UV resin requires UV light to cure. Sawdust blocks most of the UV light. So it did not cure as I would have liked. Now with the icon carving tool, I carve with a smaller rasp. I go over the entire surface, including excess UV resin. However, I exposed resin still in liquid state and had to put it back in strong sunlight to cure some more. Lesson learned, limit additives to UV resin. UV resin is convenient, but it does have this limitation versus epoxy resin. Finally, I go over the wood again with an abrasive wheel to take off any remaining unwanted ridges. For a finish, I pull out the walnut oil. I can dab this into difficult areas and wipe off the excess. It does a great job of brightening the wood. Walnut oil is also easily renewable. This is perfect for my rock volcano salt urn. I do hope this video sparks ideas for your projects. There are no rules on what a salt urn must look like, only that it can dispense salt and maybe to provoke questions that need an answer. Send me pictures. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe on my website, and tell your friends about my videos. I appreciate your comments and questions. Every week I add a new woodturning video to my website. Always, please wear your full face shield anytime the lathe is running. It could save your life.